Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rainwater Studios. Tonight we have a little bit of different content for you than our normal musical fare. Tonight we've brought Justin Schwenk into the studio to chat about some subjects that are near and dear to our hearts here in Brown County, the upcoming elections, specifically the election of commissioner. I am not well-versed in local politics, so I'm educating myself, and I hope to do a passing job of educating anybody else that doesn't know what a commissioner does before we get into the meat of this thing. It turns out that we have 3 county commissioners, and there's 1 seat open for a new commissioner this year. And this year we have 3 candidates for that position.
Actually, two open commissioner seats.
Are there 2 open commissioner seats? Okay.
Yep, District 1 and District 3.
So then of the 3 seats, we have 2 that are open, and we have 3 candidates. Are those 3 candidates vying for 2 spots?
No, the 3 candidates, myself and 2 others, are vying for District 3 commissioner, right? District 1 commissioner is located up more like in the Lakes area, and that's a race between Democrat Tiffany Arndt and Republican Kevin Patrick.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, we're getting educated already. We're way ahead of where I thought we would be. Turns out we have 2 commissioner spots open. And so we get a little background first before I give more of an introduction to Justin. The county commissioner's roles are varied. Apparently, there's this thing called house rules that are set by the state that give jurisdiction to the county over certain duties. And one of those is controlling, maintaining, and supervising county property, including courthouses, jails, and public offices. The commissioner also supervises construction and maintenance of roads, bridges, and provides for traffic control. Developing economic development programs to attract and retain jobs in the county, granting vacation pay, sick leave, paid holidays, and other similar benefits to county employees. They administer elections in conjunction with the county election board. They establish the minimum housing standard. What does that mean? What's your grasp of what is the minimum housing standard in a county?
I don't want to say guess, but my belief would be probably that means that we would work with the building inspectors, building codes, making sure that that health standards are being maintained.
That sounds right to me. We'll dive deeper into that on our own time here. Auditing and authorizing payments on behalf of the county. Incorporating new towns. We mentioned earlier, that's probably not a big one in this year's docket, but receiving bids and authorizing contracts. Exercising appointive powers, including both the selection of members to fill positions on boards, commissions, and committees, and appointments of certain department heads. And then planning and implementing strategies of solid waste handling as members of the Solid Waste District Board. So it's really a lot of issues that affect us on a daily basis.
Yeah, a lot of operational type executive functions.
Yeah, it sounds like things that are much more relevant in my daily life than even national level politics, and that's why I'm interested in this. I feel like I can have an effect here in the local realm that will benefit my children and my children's children a lot more even than on the national level. Now that we've gotten into the gears of what a commissioner does a little bit, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Justin Schwenk. Justin and I went to high school together. He graduated a year ahead of me. I've known him to be a fine neighbor and a friend. We don't always see, I don't know if we see eye to eye on politics as a whole. Justin's obviously running on the Democratic ticket. I find myself to typically be on the more conservative end of things. But in local politics, much like national politics, I think it's important to vote for the person and to find out about the person's policies. So that's why we're here today chatting with Justin Schwenk. And he also, just side note, came over here with his portable sawmill and sawed up the large poplar logs that I am now remodeling my house with.
That's right.
Big thank you
That's
to
right.
you, Justin.
Yeah, thank you.
Very handy fella. He's big in the Boy Scout troop in Brown County, Pack 190.
Pack and troop. So I was the cub master for about 8-9 years when my kids were little, and then I'm now the incoming scoutmaster of the troop level. So,
Right
yep.
on.
Yep.
And it's my understanding that it's your involvement in Scouts is one of the main reasons why you're concerned about the overall health of the county, declining enrollment in schools, and fewer and fewer young people residing in the county is, to some extent, threatening our school system and groups like the Cub Scouts. If you don't have kids, you can't have scout troops, right?
Or religious youth groups or youth sports or, what is really the lifeblood of a community, right? There's sort of two truisms, right? That all politics is local, to your point of what you can control and what really affects your daily life. But then also that there's in many ways not a liberal or conservative way of taking out the trash. Right. So I think that in some respects, when you're down at this local community level, it's not about the party. It's not about the large cultural, social dilemmas that we find ourselves in as a nation. It is more about your policies and your enthusiasm and your vision for what you would like your community to look like in the next 10, 20, 50 years.
Yeah, very good. And that's as glamorous as appointing people to different offices and as commonplace as how we deal with our trash on a daily basis.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct, right? I mean, there's a series. Our county government functions no different than, slightly different, but the same basic idea as our national and state level structure with branches of government and checks and balances on those powers. And so the county council keeps a hold of the pocketbook, right? They disperse money, but then the commissioners both sort of operate as more or less like a legislative branch. We create the ordinances that govern all of our rules locally, and then also execute those rules as well, right, in those operations. Some of them, like I said, some of them are more used than others. There are operations that you would use in a growing community. There's operations that you would use on a daily basis. And I think of all of those that you listed, the one that stands out the most is the economic direction of the community, right? Setting that economic policy.
Right on.
So,
very good. So before I turn you over to basically your opening statement to the folks at home, and before we get into the meat of these questions, I'd like for you folks at home to be thinking about any questions you might have for Justin. Send them in our comments on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll put Justin right here in the hot seat, and he'll do his best to answer any of the questions you have. We do have some areas of discussion that we're going to get into specifically, but Justin is generous and said he welcomes all questions. Is there anything you'd like to say to the folks at home before we get into the meat of the conversation here?
Yeah. First off, both to the live audience and to the audience at home, thank you so much for being here. It is never really quite it's hard to judge whether or not you are making a ripple in the pond, if you will, sometimes. And so seeing you here is encouraging, to the process. I teach social studies, government, at a high school level to dual credit seniors, right? So seniors that are both getting their high school credit and their college credit in political science. And the number one thing that I hit on every single day, every lesson redounds back to the comment that it is about engagement. It's about each of us as citizens participating in the process of our democracy. And all of you at home, all of you here are doing exactly that today. right? You are demonstrating that civic virtue, that civic duty that is incumbent on all of us. And when we don't, then that is when the health of our system begins to decline. It's when corruption can set in. It's when bad decisions are made without anybody saying anything about it. So I want to thank you and hopefully clarify some of my views and vision for the county tonight, and maybe earn a vote or two.
Very good, sir. Well said. All right, so let's dive into the meat of this thing. In preparation for this, what I'm calling a political forum, I sent Justin a request for what he feels are the 5 top issues facing Brown County, and asked him to think about what he, as a commissioner, could do to address those issues. He sent these back to me in no particular order, but I've rearranged them just a little bit. I'm going to start with this issue: developing a future-focused vision for Brown County. This has subgroups in it. These are Justin's responses to what the biggest issues facing the county are. Developing a future-focused vision for Brown County while supporting the development of attainably priced homes, attracting the next generation of Brown County residents, and supporting smart and strategic economic growth to give those residents the ability to work in the county. So what can a commissioner do to develop that future-focused vision for Brown County? And let's talk about supporting the development of attainably priced homes. How would a commissioner do that?
Those are 2 massive topics all rolled into one, right?
We're going to give it 3 minutes.
I will do my very best. So that goes exactly to that concept of economic policy, correct? What we know, what we have seen, the data points to this, is that our Brown County population is aging, right? We have, if you compare from the data that the schools put together several years ago, compare 1990 to today, we've seen an increase in the sort of was it 40 to 60 cohort, an increase of almost 65%. I think it's like 59%, 60%. We've seen a decrease in the 20 to 40 and a decrease in the 0 to 20, right? Which makes sense because the 0 to 20 or the 20 to 40 group is who's giving birth to the 0 to 20 group, right? We know this is happening, right? We know that our population is aging. We know that you hear this all the time, that we are setting ourselves up, or that we already are, a quote-unquote retirement community. But that is not the Brown County that I recognize. It's not the Brown County that I grew up in. I grew up in a vibrant, demographically healthy community. And over time, for a myriad of reasons, we have neglected the bringing in of that segment of our population that then supports the youth, right? That supports our schools, that supports our groups, that is our working population, that supports the economic entrepreneurship and growth. And so realigning, right, as sort of the chief economic and governmental vision maker, right, of the county commissioners have that ability, have the sole ability in many cases, because they're the ones that make the ordinances, right, that create the policies, to prioritize what the next generation of our county looks like. Part of that is we've got to be able to make our houses more attainably priced to essentially a first-time home buyer.
And how can a commissioner help keep the prices down on housing?
Well, I mean, there's a whole slew of different economic policies that you can do, right? You can use tax abatements, you can use incentives, you can encourage multifamily homes, you can encourage duplexes, you can encourage the redevelopment of properties, right? Which is what probably I'm most comfortable with, but having been a redevelopment commission president in the past. But, you know, I mean, it's not just going to be one solution, right? It's going to take a little bit of everything to bring back different segments of our population.
I'm sure. How about attracting the next generation of Brown County residents? What would be your main area of focus to attract residents to the county?
Well, first off, if you're 20 years old, if you're 30 years old, and the average home price is approaching $500,000 for a house that's built pre-1980, that needs $100,000 worth of updates because it hasn't been updated since 1990, and it still has outdated furnishings, and it needs probably updated septic as well in some cases. You're not coming in here. You're not getting the mortgage for that. It's just not going to happen. So that's number one, right? That's the attainably priced housing piece of it. The other piece of it is that we are sitting on the doorstep of a major Research One institution, right? Why are we not incentivizing kids, young adults, right, with economic capital, with intellectual capital, who are very well versed in the Internet of Things, who know how to do their job without needing to go to a brick and mortar location, like what is sometimes our mentality, right? Is we grew up at a time when the only way you could get a good job is going to a place where there are jobs. We now have excellent internet coverage, high-speed internet coverage in our community. And we can, as evidenced by our ability to do this here, right?
Being a subject near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah, right. We can bring these people in to do a job that they can do, not necessarily from home, but maybe something that they require to travel or this, that, or the other. But they then become the next generation. They raise their children here. They invest in our local community, in our houses.
And rolling out that broadband internet isn't so much a county government situation as it's been a federal program, a state program. But the fact is that more and more high-speed internet has become available. I don't know what the percentage of the county that's connected by it now is, but it's well
changes.
over 50%.
Yeah.
It's hopefully within the next few years we'll be at 100% connectivity. We'll never get 100%. Some people just won't do it,
No,
right?
right.
But it does present the opportunity for working from home, and just like today, it helps us overcome the hurdles of this rural locality where you might drive 30, 35 minutes to attend any kind of informational session or voting situation for politics. So hopefully broadband internet will help us confront a lot of these issues. I think now is probably a great time to mention that we have a lovely studio audience right here with us, people of diverse backgrounds from Brown County. I want to say, if you're having a hard time hearing us speak at all, you have headsets under your seats and volume controls so you can hear Justin's lush, wonderful voice right there. But at this time, I would like to ask if any of you have questions about that topic, the development of a future-focused vision for Brown County and housing. Not so much. I know we have Brian Webb in the audience, who has been a part of the sewer district situation or the development of the sewer district in Helmsburg. He attended a lot of meetings when he should have been here playing guitar for me. He was always over there doing his due diligence and his civic duty, which we appreciate almost as much as his guitar playing.
What is there for young people to do in Brown County these days besides like maybe explore Brown County?
Yeah, buddy.
All these things are going. What is there for them to do?
Our friend Mr. Smiley is asking, what is there for young people to do in this county?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a chicken and egg situation, right? So, number one, there's this mentality that you have to go somewhere in order to find something fun to do. But the reality is that the millennial generation is almost stereotypically focused on wanting to live their best lives outside, right? They popularly avoid large homes with a lot of upkeep. They want the smaller cottages that we have here. They can do their job from home, get on their bike, go out down the Salt Creek Trail, live their best life at Yellowstone and the Brown County State Park, and they can come in. To the point of growing, however, again, why are we not catering to IU's recent graduates, bring in culinary students to expand our operations, bring in artists who are true artisans in the truest sense of the fashion, that are going to open studios downtown, bringing in musicians to grow that industry in our community. That's what we are. That's what we do. It's what we're built off of. So why we're not building on that is very different, or very difficult for me to understand. As they come in, they're also bringing with them that entrepreneurial spirit to create opportunities that then grow, right? It begins an upward spiral instead of only focusing on the fact that the place closes down at 8 o'clock. Or at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, right? You start bringing new people in, they will find opportunities. They will create opportunities to do fun things.
Where do these new people go? Our tax base is mostly national forest, park, church, county properties, like Sycamore Land Trust. Where's all this? Where all these people go?
Oh man, tell me about it. Oh, go ahead.
Just a moment. Let me hand this microphone so the folks at home can hear it.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's probably all I'm doing.
Well, go ahead and repeat that question for me. I couldn't sum it up for you.
So with our tax base and with the parks and the churches and the land trusts and all this, where do these people go? Do we build high rises? What are we going to do?
Well, it doesn't require high rises, right? What I would say is that you're hitting the point directly, or you're hitting the nail on the head, right? Over 65% of our county is essentially not usable, right? Because of it being in state park, state forest, which is a fantastic problem to have, right? I would much rather it be preserved than not, okay? Add to that the fact, and I'm gonna say it's even worse than you think, right? Because then you have to think, okay, well, how much of our land that is capable of development is actually in a floodplain or on a hillside, right? Believe it or not, Brown County is incredibly land scarce, right? So using that land and using it extremely strategically is important, okay? If we don't do anything, then nothing is going to happen. What I would suggest is, number one, we have great plans to look at developing multi-home development, right? We have plans in the works that need supported, first off. Number two, what I would say is that this goes to the plan that I created about 5-6 years ago, and a big motivating factor for why I'm sitting here right now. We had that question, like what are we going to do with where are we going to put people, and more appropriately is how are we going to a former person on the RDC mentioned this, like how are we going to clean this place up, was his mentality. And I said, well, that's rough, right? Because that's a pretty sensitive topic, and we need to approach that with, being a local, we need to approach that topic with great cultural sensitivity, right? And so he's, well, then you just solve the problem. I said, okay, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'll do some research and see what I can do. What I created was a plan that is actually being used in different communities around the Midwest. All I did was I just kind of stitched them all together into a plan. But essentially what it calls for is finding those areas that are vacant and abandoned, right? And then redeveloping those in a way that promotes our circular economy, all right? And I know I'm speaking in really big terms because I have no time to get into this. Like, we could talk about this for hours. But essentially, we have plans. We have plans that have been drawn up, ordinances that are ready. We can begin this process in November, right? To create small homes that are for first-time home buyers using the land that we already have. It's there. It really is.
Very good. Would you mind handing that microphone over to Mr. Webb?
So with political challenges such as there's always this challenge of development versus we want to keep the county as it is.
Yep.
That's check. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So as far as the conflict you're always going to get between we do not want the county to change because we like it the way it is versus, okay, here is a beautiful, we're real close to Spernica right now. There's 250 acres up there that has been purchased a few years back. That would be an opportunity to have a subdivision and so forth. You have a lot of opposition to that. What is your view in response to those challenges?
So it goes to one of the other points that I mentioned to Keenan, right, which is preserving and protecting our natural environment. And I want to throw something out there. Like I said, I currently right now I teach at Whiteland Community High School. And I'm not from that area, and I don't want to quote specific dates, but let's say about 2006, roughly. I think there was something about like 600 kids that go to that school, right? Brown County was larger than Whiteland High School. Today, when I look out my window, we are building a 3-story addition to our school because we are over 2,000 kids, and we are bursting at the seams, okay? That is a community that has invested highly in subdivisions. It has changed the character of the community. And while that is fine for them, and I'm sure there's differing opinions up north, what I would say down here is it is a cautionary tale of what happens when we don't have a well-planned and well-established idea of how we wish to grow, okay? Number one, I'm not against the idea of putting in subdivisions, right? I think they need to be planned well. I think they need to fit with the local aesthetic of the community. I'm not suggesting that we do 50 to 100 home developments, but maybe something in the 10, 15 range, somewhere around there where it fits, where it works. We will always be limited in subdivision development by the issue of sewers, right? So until we accomplish that, that's a problem. There's a danger there as well, because when you put the sewers in, you are going to find individuals who are going to take advantage of that system. They are going to manipulate the rules that are there so that they can maximize their profits, right? And really, I mean, when you look at the geography of the county, let's not dance around it, right? Let's not sugarcoat it. It's that northern tier, right? It's the northern tier of the county that is both geographically best suited for subdivisions, and number two, it's where the population is coming from, okay? The danger there is that, number one, you start to turn the northern tier of the county into Trafalgar, Nineveh, Edinburgh, Franklin, Whiteland, right? And nobody wants that, right? I don't want that. The other issue is that those people that come in, yeah, they increase our tax base, but then they send their kids to Indian Creek, they send their kids to Franklin, they send their kids to me because they drop them off on the way to work and then they pick them back up on the way here. So managing and developing a way to avoid that is really, really important. What I would suggest is, following my plan, is that I can, my plan is to increase the housing supply without increasing the developmental footprint. You take down the vacant and abandoned building. We know it's a home site because it had a home on it, right? and you rebuild a single family home for a first time home buyer. In that way, you are putting homes back into the supply. You are organically sprinkling them throughout the county in places where they are less likely to then send their kids outside of the county to school, right? So I feel like you can, I hate to say it, kind of have your cake and eat it too, but it requires a certain degree of planning and vision and unified sense of purpose. But it's going to take all ideas, right? I mean, it's going to take a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it sounds like that flows right into your third issue facing the county, or this is maybe more a portion of that vision you're talking about, to position Brown County as a place to raise a family. And subheadings under there: strong schools, strong youth organizations, attracting young families, and 21st century jobs. And it sounds like all of those things need to happen concurrently and would be strengthened concurrently with the right programs in place. Is there anything you'd like to say about positioning Brown County as a place to raise a family?
Well, I think there's a danger there. I mean, there's a not a danger per se, but a point of concern, right? We have, for, like I said, a lot of different reasons, positioned Brown County as a place where you can retire. And that's great. That has worked well for us economically for the last 20 or 30 years, right? But the vast majority of retirees right now are baby boomers. Baby boomers and this is the history teacher in me coming out, a lot of our elementary schools look like they were built in the 1960s because that's when we needed a glut of elementary schools. College was cheap in the 70s and the 80s because that's when we had a glut of college students going to college and you didn't have to charge a whole lot. The baby boomers, to their credit, there are so many of them entering the workforce, they oversaw one of the greatest economic expansions of our country's history. Now you're seeing the growth of retirement communities across the nation at unprecedented levels. When you think about where you go to retire when you get older, it's Florida. You go to Florida, you see all the little villages, right? You see the winter havens, you see all these places, the condos. Now they're beginning to move into aged care facilities, and you're seeing a huge amount of aged care facilities that are growing, right? So they're reacting to that. The baby boomers, however, didn't replace themselves population-wise, right? So the Gen X generation has always been less populated than the baby boomers. That's why college is more expensive for all of us today, and so on and so forth. Well, they're now predicted, unfortunately, as is natural in all of life, in the next 20 years, our baby boomers are going to be few and far between, right? As we've watched the greatest generation disappear, we're living at a time when we're going to be watching that happen over the next 20, 30 years.
So it's created a nursing shortage as the baby boomer generation retires from nursing and then also needs nursing care more and more often as they get older.
But the problem is that if we have positioned ourselves as a retirement community, in the next 20 years, who's retiring here? Right? Because there's going to be 3 times as many retirement homes nationwide as there are retirees to fill them, right? And here we are with old houses, well-developed houses, right? And nobody or fewer people to buy them. Will Brown County ever not be a place that attracts retirees? No, that would be ridiculous. But we are going to have to fight harder to attract the same number of retirees, right? Or we could lean into what recently, 2-3 years ago, the Pew Research Foundation announced for the first time in living memory, the baby boomers are no longer the U.S.'s largest living demographic. It's now millennials. Right? So we could get ahead of the curve, bring in millennials, right, with first-time homebuyer homes, and young and homes, that in the next 20 years, as retirees move into their aging care facilities or move out of this community, these people are staged and ready to move into that more traditional home, and we can support a planned support of the closing of the bubble, right? Or we can do nothing. We can watch it pop.
Right. Are you ready
And,
for a
you know.
little more difficult question, maybe? As a
Oh,
right. So
yeah.
somebody coming from a little more conservative side of the
Sure.
aisle. We speak a lot about strategic vision, what government can do.
Mm-hmm.
What about what government can not do? Are there restrictive laws? Is there red tape in place that we could do away with to allow the free market to expand and solve some of these problems? How can we encourage private citizens to go into businesses that will bring young families to the county and build homes here for young people? Have you identified any restrictive laws in this county that you think we could do with that?
I do think that we need to look at and review our septic policies, right? They tend to be very narrow. I'm also not an expert in septic systems,
Right.
so I would defer to those people who are more knowledgeable and allow myself to educate myself on that particular issue. But that's what I'm hearing from individuals, that septic issues and whatnot are an issue. I think that having a well-developed planning and zoning document, which outlines what our vision is for the community, I think isn't so much that it's a restrictive thing, but it is a document that empowers us and it limits us when it's not well thought out, right? Number one. But to the other side of that, which is, identifying the private, entrepreneurial spirit, the government can only do so much, right? Government can facilitate the creation of a good and rich environment where entrepreneurial opportunities can grow, right? It's not the government building your houses, right? It's not the government bringing in new people. It is setting up the environment which then allows entrepreneurial spirited individuals to come in and build those houses. It's private-public partnerships that are going to make these things happen.
Agreed. Now, are there any questions or comments from our wonderful live studio audience? We have people from all sorts of backgrounds here. Mr. Bloss.
A lot of what you're talking about is stuff that I've been pondering for a long time. I think about kind of the future of Brown County. I'm an interloper. I came in from Fishers about 8.5 years ago, probably the only boomer in the room here. The intention that I had was not so much about retiring here per se. It was I'm an entrepreneur. I've had a branding design business since '95, and it was the attributes of the county, living in nature and that sort of thing, that attracted me. Fishers was very tight and expensive and all that. And I, initially had to get a space downtown because I had no internet connectivity where I lived. That has since changed. I'm a business guy, and I always look at kind of the nuts and bolts and leveraging and how do you get there economically. And you can use chicken and egg, you can use cart before the horse, you use the term concurrent. I look at these issues and I go, we need a big influx of cash to be able to put in this infrastructure. We need to put out for bid things that will help create these homes the homes that you're talking about, I think, are very conducive to the type of people that they can be smaller, millennials and such, don't appear to want big, like in the 80s, we all wanted everything big, you know?
Yeah.
But I've often thought, and I know I'm kind of rambling, but this is all stuff I've been just thinking about, how does it get accomplished? And, you know, connectivity was number one to me, but I think there's also, you know, some sort of, and you talk about government, you know, potential, at least intervention to some extent, making it, I guess, marketing the area to the type of people, and I'm thinking more in the tech sector. There are so many startups. You look at Indiana, or Indianapolis, I mean, they have put a huge focus on being kind of a tech incubator type thing. We've got IU, and we've got Purdue, and we've got Rose-Hulman, and all these sorts of things. The whole idea of virtual, you know, people that are in the development side of things, you know, are there incentives where we can go, hey, incubatable business, come
Right.
here, we'll give you incentives and abatements or whatever it takes to set up shop, create the kind of jobs that make big money that will help the tax base. To me, that's one of the things I think we need to market for that kind of person, or, you know, but again, where do they live?
Right. Right. Like I said, it's one of those sort of it's a complex issue, and it's one that you have to tackle multiple aspects of it at the same time. I think that we could conceivably get new housing inventory within 3 to 5 years, to be honest, in a way that then also creates a school to work pipeline here in the county. We have home builders here in the county. We have the Beamery, for example, right, in Helmsburg, that is looking to expand, and we had some conversations with them a couple years ago where they were saying, you know, we would like to be able to do something, but they need workers, right? Well, we have Eagle Manufacturing at our schools, so we can teach our students these these advanced manufacturing skills, put them into a job where they are then building homes that are they themselves can live in, right? That are affordable, that they themselves can live in. You bring in individuals who are the incubatable jobs, right? And realize that yeah, throughout all of this, you know, we're talking about tax abatements and incentives, and well, what the heck are we getting from them? Well, what we're getting from them is the circular economy of them, bringing in income taxes and bringing in all the other secondary economic benefits that come. That's not just property taxes. You bring in more people, well, suddenly we have more money for better roads. You know, we have more money to continue to grow and develop.
Yeah, it's all interconnected.
It is.
It definitely is. I look at things like abatements, for example. They're not forever. You put time frames to them, they sunset and all that business. But you jumpstart, let's say, you know, a business to be able to spawn here and, you know, set roots and then create part of our economy here.
Right. I also, I don't want to cut you off, but before I forget, speaking of where do we get the money from, right? Again, big reason I'm sitting here right now is because when we just completed we're in the process of completing the Ready 2.0 grant from the state of Indiana. Ready 1.0 had 2 Brown County projects that were approved, mine and another one, right? Mine had just shy of $1 million pledged for housing development, and our commissioners turned it down, right? Chose not to go forward with it, and the plan went nowhere. right? So, we can either choose to take an action, to have political will to do it, or we can choose to see where it takes us.
One last comment,
Sure.
and then I'll give up the mic to somebody else. I remember, for example, when they knocked down Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, they put out bids to private corporations to come in and develop, and they pitched ideas and concepts and all that sort of thing. Are we actively doing anything like that with regard to, you can call it a subdivision, whatever development, and subdivision can be whatever we want it to be. Like you say, it can be architecturally in character with everything within the county. It didn't have to look like a Vinyl Village from, north side of Indianapolis kind of deal. But I guess I'm big on, we can talk and we can act.
Exactly.
And to me, I look at it and I go, are there identified pieces of property, let's say, that could be developed, that we could get some developers bidding on putting together a 15 house development that's 1,200 square feet or less, or whatever the stipulations are. And again, I think that's very conducive to the type of people, the next generation that we're trying to attach. They don't want 3,200 square foot houses.
Right.
They see no need for it. It's foolishness, which I agree. Make it reasonable, put some space between them, whatever it takes. But it feels like, again, being sensitive, but there's sort of this old guard that I hear this all the time that says, we don't want it to change. And I look at it and I go, that's very beautiful, nostalgic thinking, but we'll have tumbleweeds going down the middle of the street with nobody around because nothing will be upkept or,
Right. Well, and to that point, right, those who don't want it to change need to also realize that any plan that we put into effort or into place right now is going to take years to come to fruition, right? So if you wait until you're gone, then you're not just waiting until you're gone. You're also waiting another 10 years after that, right? And I think that there are critical parts of our community that are not going to survive that long, right? So we need to be forward thinking. We need to realize that the time is now. The time is 10 years ago, right? That we needed to be doing this. We could have been 5 to 8 years ahead of where we are right now if people had taken some of the projects that our redevelopment commission, our county redevelopment commission, had created 8 years ago, right? But I left that commission because it was painfully clear that we were not going to move forward on any of the things that we were doing. I was going to have to find something better to do. There are things I think that are in development. You always kind of hear whispers of this or that. There are things that have been approved here and not approved there, but unless you really move forward with it in a public sort of way, in a transparent sort of way, you market it as this is happening, then I think that nothing's real until it's real, right? So yeah.
So I apologize in advance for putting a friend on the spot, but as I say hi to a couple folks at home, Mr. Tilton, could you put together a few words about tax abatements, property development, and the government's role in encouraging development in the county? So think about that for a second as I say, hello, Marina Stant. I'm glad you're enjoying the chat. Mr. Fettig, I'm glad that you find this to be an interesting format. I think that we would like to do this more often. Currently, we don't have specific plans for that, but the studio is open to ideas. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. Mr. Tilton, do you have some words about development in the county?
Yeah, so sewers are obviously the biggest,
Oh yeah.
most costly capital expense that we need to have any kind of development. RDC has a big role in that. I go to a lot of the RDC meetings lately, and it seems like they're starting to figure it out. So what are your thoughts on economic development areas, tax increment financing, and how do you get the ball rolling with RDC, and then as people get circular, go in and out of the go in and out of the out of the board, how do you get them to stay in alignment, to know what they're supposed to be doing? Because a lot of times it's like re-educating the new people, have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they start from scratch, and 10 years goes by, and they don't even know that EDAs and TIFs exist.
Yep.
So what's your plan?
I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, tell me about it. It's like Groundhog's Day, isn't it? When I joined, there was one remaining member from the previous group that had all left. Within 1 year, I found myself as the oldest member of the Redevelopment Commission and the president of the Redevelopment Commission. What do I know? Did I get any onboarding, training? Exactly that, right?
Exactly.
We put together a team of 5 individuals that worked well together. We worked really hard. We educated ourselves. We came up with ideas. And I hope it's not too cynical for me to say, to your point, the RDC does exactly what the Board of Commissioners empowers them to do, right? What the commissioners are going to want done is what the RDC is going to do, right? So, I stepped away about the time that they were came together and said, we want you to study the 45 corridor and look for opportunities for development in that area. And I didn't like the tone of it in some ways. I felt like that what they were asking me in not so many words to do was look for the areas where we can put some 50 home developments in, right? Just the minute that we get the sewers running through that area. And at that point I thought, now, you know what, this is happening in ways that I don't agree with, right? So I stepped back, and within a few months, my whole team of 5 was gone and a new team was in place. And I think even from that time, there's a new team of 5 there. And so you're absolutely right. I think finding people who are good at what they do, finding people who are enthusiastic about change in this community and doing it the right way, empowering those people, and just being a good manager. As a commissioner, part of your job is to manage the people that you place on boards and empower them to share the workload and be that idea pump, right? That then we build off of.
So as you started your campaigning, I know you're busy. Do you have the time commitment to do what it takes to make sure these kinds of things happen, so that there is a longevity for when that you are no longer a commissioner at some point, that the things that you put in place, like the master plan and strategic plans and the foundation, the operating procedures of RDC, and so that people have onboarding for these positions that know what they're doing, they can pick the ball where it was left off. Do you have the bandwidth to do it?
I think that if you look at the things that I do, right? I'm a teacher, which is a hard gig, right? Full-time job type thing. I'm a scoutmaster, which is a time commitment, but it's something that I've been doing since I was a kid, and it's a very easy task for me to do. It's a labor of love. I'm the chair of the Democrat Party for the county. I think that at some point, you have to find those things that maybe you have to cut back on, right? So I think probably if I wound up being elected, I think it would probably not be the right job for me to continue in my role as chair of the party, right? Let that step down, somebody else take over, and I would concentrate on the needs of the community. I recently, just as of last week, spoke to my superintendent and mentioned to him, said, hey, there's a lot of commitments and meetings during the daytime, during business hours. I am going to blast through my sick leave and free time. There was a teacher in Terre Haute when I taught up there who ran for the state legislature, and when the state legislature was in session, there was a memorandum of understanding between him and the corporation. They got him a long-term sub, and he left the classroom, for those few months, and then he came back. My superintendent and I kind of have a understanding that if I am to be successful, then we'll cross that bridge when we get there. They are most certainly not going to disadvantage me for civic engagement and in a subject that I teach, right? Because it's something that I can learn from and enrich what I do in the classroom. And then to the other point, though, is that I think a lot of the business, to a certain extent, it makes sense. You do business during business hours, but that is an incredibly limiting factor for a massive part of our population, right? Unless you have a job that gives you a flexible schedule, or you're retired, or unemployed, I suppose, you don't have the ability to drop what you're doing at 2:00 in the afternoon and go to a commissioner's meeting. And I think that if I was commissioner, the first thing that I would propose is that public meetings need to occur after 6:00, right? And that's a sacrifice on my part, right? And a part of our government officials, but that's what we do. We serve our communities, and we certainly don't use time to limit citizens' input and participation.
So question.
Yeah.
Regarding infrastructure and all the challenges that would be required for development. I serve for Helmsburg Regional Sewer District, and there's a few districts in the county. There's Gnawbone, there's Helmsburg, and then you have Nashville, and then there is Brown County has a BCRSD, which is kind of a global authority.
Yep.
That was granted permission years ago to help facilitate is the theory about how that is to work.
Yeah.
Everybody is independent, though. And so when it comes to future development, what could a commissioner do? Because, for example, we're in need of a new sewer plant in Helmsburg. We have a package plant, a brand new package plant. It's a $4 million ordeal. It's silly to spend $4 million that we don't have when there's a huge need around. And we've been working with BCRSD to try to connect on the 45 quadrant Lemon, the Beacon's area, and have a large, very expensive plant in the center, which we cannot afford. But there's a lot of tactical issues when it comes to trying to get different organizations to have the ability to get financing to even work together. What could a commissioner do for the county to help us, Helmsburg, BCRSD as the governing authority, Gnawbone, Nashville, and so forth? What could the county commissioners do to help facilitate those challenges?
Well, I think to the point of what a commissioner could do, I think that I would learn what a commissioner could do once I'm in charge. If you waved a magic wand and made me the commissioner right now, the way that I would tackle that problem is first by bringing the interested parties together, right? You have to create the atmosphere of why we're there and what our goals are, be clear with our objectives, assume positive intent that we're all here to do something and good for our community, serve our larger area. From my perspective, I am broadly supportive of sewer expansion in the county. I feel like it is one of those modern infrastructures that, the person, 100 years ago who's like, you're not electrifying my house, was just on the wrong side of history on that one, right? The geography of Brown County is unique. Maybe it's something that one entity can deal with. Maybe it's something that requires multiple entities. Streamlining that process where it makes sense and growing efficiencies, I think, is important. And there's probably areas of the county that will never be connected simply because that's what it is. But I think what is not conducive to it is to steam forward no matter what and say this is going to happen, whether it's a good idea or not. So let's come together. Let's figure out, what is the best path forward, lay out a plan, and then begin to market, begin to educate, begin to build a coalition of individuals in this community that think this is a good idea. Listen to what our community says. Look for those bids. Look for where people are giving away grants. Is the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, what's on their plate? What's on Okra's plate? There's plenty of money to be had. It just depends on if you're going to actively work for it, or is this going to be pet projects of individuals who are just going to push forward no matter what. I commend all of our boards and all of the individuals who work for the betterment and the development of our community. It's mostly a matter of first listening to them as well.
I appreciate your thorough answers to these questions. I want to make sure that we spend time on a couple more subjects.
Yeah.
The sewer project is a deep discussion. I like what you're saying about bringing people together to tackle the problem.
No pun intended.
Which one? I missed it.
A deep subject.
Deep subject. Yes, you have to dig for that one.
Before you move on, though, Keenan.
Yeah, sure.
I have a statement and then a quick, easy question for you.
Go for it.
So it seems to me that we are shooting ourselves in the foot by limiting the amount of Airbnb opportunities in this county by distance, by whatever the rule is. I don't even know what the rule is, but I know there is one. So the younger people that we need to come here and live could absolutely afford to do so if they were able to rent their home half a dozen days a year. That's 2 of their mortgage payments. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's just the silliest thing in the world. If someone wants to buy a home and they want to rent it to someone for the weekend for $600, it's America.
Yeah.
I think they should be able to do so.
Yeah.
So, no, but you don't even have to reply to that.
Okay.
I just wanted to put that out there. My only question really is, does Brown County have an infrastructure manager, or is that the job of the 3 commissioners?
I don't know of an infrastructure manager specifically. I would say that if anything, Brown County has a lot of little individual silos that take care of their own world, and they don't talk to each other very much, right?
Because there's no manager.
Because there's no manager,
Right.
exactly. And so, finding somebody who can be that hub, right? Who whoever that is, if that's the commissioner, if that's the RDC, if that's whatever. I
think there's one that needs to be created.
You offering, or like most things, it would probably be a volunteer, for the time being, right? No, I mean, I think that's a fantastic idea. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Day. We have some comments from our friend Marina. My family may have to sell our house when we could potentially stay in the.
Might need to scroll over.
I'm missing a little bit of that comment, man. If you might help me out. Oh, thank you. Wanted to talk about that. This is an issue for my family too. There's a limit on Airbnbs. My family may have to sell our house when we could potentially stay in the county and Airbnb the house for part of the year and keep the house that my grandpa built in our family. We could keep the house in our family if we could Airbnb it.
Right.
So to Mr. Day's point, loosening some restrictions could be very beneficial for residents that would like to stay here.
Yeah, and just to that point, right? I mean, just summarize both of those. It comes down to, again, innovative vision and being sort of forward thinking with how you scaffold it, right? There was this concept that if, we are a land scarce place, and if you have all the available homes going to become rentals, then that limits people from coming in, right? There is always that ability to look at it from a different perspective as well, right? How is Airbnb structured as opposed to more of a traditional vacation home or a vacation rental? Being nimble, being agile, being flexible and adaptable, and aware of the changing trends in those kinds of things. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. As I think the biggest thing that, again, I what I don't want is somebody then to say, okay, well, I bought my house and I'm going to Airbnb it, and I'm going to Airbnb it all year long, right? That becomes a manipulation. That becomes a problem. That is a very overcomable issue simply by putting guardrails, right?
You might know the name of this other system. There's Airbnb-ing, and then what is it called? A home share or some type of thing where if you live in the home, a homestay.
Homestay, yeah.
So that you can let it out for the weekend and whatnot, as long as you also reside there.
Yeah.
And is that? Yeah, that's a bit restrictive. So if somebody wanted to be somewhere else 6 months out of the year, and then be back in their home the other 6 months, that's not allowable in our current code.
Right.
Gotcha. Do you have some input for us, Mr. Tilton?
Yeah, I've been thinking about the vacation rental issue that we have in the county for quite a while. And then few years ago, they passed an ADU ordinance, accessory dwelling units. It seems to me like if you had a primary residence and your septic system or sewer line would be capable of adding an accessory dwelling unit. Right now, the county does not allow those to be turned into tourist rentals. Seems to me like if you add an accessory dwelling unit, it would increase the property taxes, it would increase the economic impact of the land you already have and the system septic system you already have. So if we can incentivize people, for instance, to build ADUs and give them the automatic, it can be rented out by the night. Those things like that. So there's a lot of little things that you could do to help incentivize and increase productivity on the land that we already have.
Yeah.
A business and a residence rather than just a business or just a residence.
Well, so my house, right? When we moved back, we got it approved as a bed and breakfast, right? We wound up not making it a bed and breakfast, right? But we just wanted to be able to know that we could, if we wanted to. We have a septic system that is way larger than what we actually need, right? Because the hope is that one day we would like to expand, build a couple attached apartments, right? Bedrooms that people could stay at. And then from there, do exactly that, right? I have 20 acres of land. I want to build a little path that goes back to the back end. I want to have little tiny houses, tree houses, whatever, It's not hurting anybody. So no, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think it's a matter of well thought out planning and zoning, right? And a well thought out vision for what we want and what we don't want, right? And as long as you're staying there, I mean, yeah, to me it seems like it's a no-brainer.
So as commissioner, would you encourage a revamping or an in-depth look at zoning and regulation laws that we currently have that may have been outdated?
Absolutely. Yeah, they are, right? I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, right? But I'm I feel like the last time I looked at the county planning and zoning document, it's like 2 pages long. That's not acceptable, right?
Pardon my ignorance. Is that too long or too short?
Oh, it's far too short.
Too short.
Yes, yeah. Not very well thought out.
Gotcha.
Right?
It needs to be
It's
more of a strategic vision.
incredibly vague, and it allows basically whatever we decide we want to allow, as opposed to,
Keeping us in our lane.
keeping us in our lanes, and it could absolutely use a relook.
Right on. Very good. Before we move on, is there anything else you all would like to add to this subject? Thank you for the question, Marina. That was great.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So, the effort at a bit of brevity here. We're already a little longer duration of this stream than we intended, but I really enjoy the topics we're on.
Yeah.
But there's a couple that we could lump together a little bit here. You mentioned supporting and expanding the arts and crafts to build on what we are already good at,
Yeah.
which I totally, you've got my vote on that one. I come at this from an artistic point of view. The Brown County's an art colony, and we should support that every way we can and attract more artistic young people, in my opinion. And that kind of dovetails into this other issue you mentioned, continued support of the music center. There are those who are opposed to the music center, would like to sell it off to private entities or close it down altogether, heaven forbid, in my opinion. Now that it's proved out, as after the tragedy that was COVID and the Black Swan event that kept the doors of that place closed and made it look like a grim situation where it might have to be sold off, now we see it putting money back into the community. It's bringing high-level talent here, bringing a lot of people to Brown County to go to those concerts. It seems to be a success. And what are your thoughts on the music center, and what are your thoughts on how to support and expand arts and crafts to build on what we're already good at here?
Well, first of all, if I can be so bold as to say declaratively, anybody who is calling for closing or selling the music center is purely a disqualification of office. I mean, that is beyond the pale in my book, right? This is a step in the right direction. It is but one step in the right direction. We are an art colony. That is our history. That is what we are good at. It's what we need to lean into and synergize with. And we've already kind of touched on this. I've kind of addressed it already. We need to be looking for young artists and artisans to come to our community to become that next generation of store owner, shop owner, right? Studio owner, right? Service provider, musician, right? This becomes the draw for more people to come to Brown County. It number one, it brings it leans into our economy as a tourist economy, right? It actually helps to stabilize that economy in the sense that now we actually have a little bit of broader base, right? We're not just relying on tourism, we're also relying on other industries as well, right? With with the jobs that are coming in. But
now, are you referring to maybe like the hospitality industry, heads and beds? Are you referring to the chefs, the cooks for the culinary areas?
Yeah.
Broom makers, all the crafts that...
All of them, right? All of them. And I would even say, too, if you're, and this is not to the point of the artists, but my brain kind of started to drift, the people who come in who are graphic designers, the people who come in who are accountants, the people who come in with those entrepreneurial, intellectual capital jobs, right, that diversify our buckets, right, so that we're not just focused on one tourism bucket with arts in it, but the music center draws people, right? But the music center draws people. They also need places to eat. They also want to see, huh?
So did the operator.
So did the
Mr.
operator.
Smiley, yeah.
Put on his toes to make that.
Yeah, yeah, and what I would say to that is, as much as I am a historian, that was before my time, right? What I'm most interested in is what is, right? It is here now. How do we maximize that as what we do?
I have a couple comments.
Sure.
And again, we're hitting on subjects that just swirl in my head. I happen to be, a professional designer, graphic designer. I had one of the largest design firms in Indianapolis before I moved here. One thing I would like to see is things like the Music Center and other entities. The CVB characteristically uses a firm from Indianapolis. They're a good firm, they do decent work, but there are talented people within the county. Why are we taking the jobs that we potentially could have here, farming them out to Indianapolis when, I moved here and I'm engaged and rooted into this community, and I'm on all kinds of boards and this, that, and the other. I'm very passionate about Brown County. But I look at the Music Center, and I was on the steering committee originally and understood kind of what the whole idea was. It did what it was supposed to. It's an economic engine that basically draws people in to spend money. It gives us a high profile. It also, I heard first year people talking about year over year during the winter months, I'm up 70%. That's all I got to hear. Last year, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like $269,000 that was over the threshold of operating capital and whatever they needed that they then moved to the community foundation. To the point about artists and artisans, I went to art school. I have a lot of friends that are artists and artisans, and it was always the running joke that the commercial ones went into graphic design and all that, and the other ones waited tables and then did their art at night. The problem is it's difficult to make it, and I'm not putting it down. I have tremendous respect for artists and artisans and what they can do. I think it's one of those things where I always think in terms of how do you leverage something that you got going for you to maybe help another area. And what I mean is, if that $269,000, could some of it be apportioned for some sort of a co-op where artisans and artists don't have to pay rent because it's a hard road, but they can do beautiful things. But if they're waiting tables all day or doing whatever that they need to survive, then they're not. And that's why I think we have, and you hear people going, hey, we got a lot of imported stuff in our stores, Chinese, whatever, wherever it's made, it's not like it used to be. That's one thing I think. How can we recreate kind of the artist colony mentality that when you go in a shop, it's all handmade, it's all, and that may be pie in the sky, but again, I think about how do we leverage the things that we have, and if we've got Vince Gill coming in and Emmylou Harris and all that, and it floods, the coffers, can we reapportion that to those things that really need some influx of money?
Right. Yeah, we can. And there are ways to make that happen. To the point of it being pie in the sky, who cares? Right? It's amazing what you can do when you don't know you can't do it. Right? We put man on the moon, for God's sake. I think we can figure this out. Right? What we want to do, we have the ability to shape our world the way we want it to look. And that is my starting place, right? Let's figure out what it needs to happen, and then let's make it happen.
There's the beginning of a project going on at the old sock factory that some ambitious and forward-thinking people are working on creating a tech lab over there.
Yes.
And there are some thoughts of building out multiple rooms where artists and craftspeople could work in their disciplines while also creating video lessons and instructional materials on how to do that. Things from ceramics to a culinary kitchen could be in there. Anyone that has a skill set in the arts could work in this place. It's in its beginning foundational elements right now, but what could a commissioner do to help fund projects like that? Does a commissioner get a say in where the CVC puts that money that comes in from the Bracketing Music Center and the innkeeper's tax? Does the commissioner have control of a general fund? How does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, there is a general fund. I think that a lot of it goes to places where it needs to go to begin with, just for operational costs. As for what the commissioner's role in where that division of the profits from the music center go, as I understand it, it's about 75% to the community foundation, about 25% to the county. Where that money goes, how it's divided up once it gets to the community foundation, I think probably you have a voice on that, but I don't know what the nuts and bolts of it
I know
are.
Mr. Schultz tuned in. Mr. Jim Schultz, he's been on the CVC committee for a while.
He has been.
And
He's
could
the guy to
probably
ask.
speak to this, right?
He's
So we'd love
definitely
to
the
have
guy
a
to ask.
conversation with you sometime, Jim, to get into that more. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes.
Appreciating what we're
Yep.
doing here. But I think there are more projects like this tech lab situation. There are things that could help with that forward vision, of attracting artists, attracting young people, giving people some gainful employment here in the county that fits our historical paradigm of artistry in the art colony, and also makes it possible for them to make a living while raising their kids here and inspiring them to become artists. So I've appreciated your comments along those lines. Is there anything you'd like to add before we get to your honorable mention subject?
Oh, jeez, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that
Sure.
one. No, otherwise, I mean, it's great to hear about the tech lab. I had kind of heard rumors about it, but I didn't know what phase it was in. That I don't know if it is necessarily.
Infrastructure for that. That's why the sock factory left. They don't have the
Yeah,
power.
there are some
Yeah.
infrastructure issues over there
Yeah.
that could be tackled by creating their own water source with their own water pump. That'd be
Right.
an expensive venture, but anything's overcomable with enough resources
Yes.
behind it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason I mentioned that is because when I was on the RDC, we were approached by a gentleman who had some kind of very unique ideas and said, "Hey, listen, we can make this happen." And one of those things was, in fact, like a maker space or an incubation lab that he wanted to position there in Helmsburg, and it didn't really go anywhere. It didn't pan out. I mean, I think that's what a lot of things. People have great ideas, and that's one of the things that I think as a commissioner, maybe that's not the operational job of a commissioner, but it's absolutely the cheerleader and the main pusher of a good idea, right? Somebody that can help
resources towards a good idea.
figure out how to facilitate that. But I mean, from ideas that I've heard tonight to ideas that have been given to me by other citizens, I mean, they're all just they're just getting filed away, and then when we have those opportunities, empowering those individuals to do that.
Right on. Very good. Well, our last topic is the ORV ordinance, the off-road vehicle ordinance. Some people would like to see folks be able to drive their side-by-sides and their off-road vehicles on county roads. What do you think about allowing that in the county?
So I was approached just actually a few weeks ago on this topic. Somebody kind of wanted to know what my feelings were on it. And to be honest, it was one that I up to that point I had kind of thought, well, I don't really have a dog in that fight, right? I'm a proud owner of a Polaris side by side. You know, I've grown up with ATVs and I use them regularly, but unfortunately my driveway empties out onto the highway, and so I don't have access to the county roads, right? So,
So this is just for county roads. Is that what people are advocating? Just
yes,
on
so
county roads,
yeah,
not
just
state highways.
yeah, you can't put them on the state highways. But my point was that I was watching and I was kind of keeping an eye on how it was developing, but I knew in the back of my mind, like, what, I can't use it. What is it? What's the matter? I mean, it's passed. I mean, it's the law now. It's the ordinance. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think that it's a very common thing. It's becoming more common. My family lives down in Du Bois County, and they have it okay. I mean, we drive around on the county roads down there. The main difference, of course, is that they are very long, flat, straight cornfield type roads you can see everywhere. I do have a concern that we have very narrow, very twisty and kind of blind corners, and there could be accidents,
Well, I
right?
think that's definitely something to raise awareness about. We have a lot of bicyclists anyway.
Yes, right.
Being a person who grew up here driving like a maniac as a 16-year-old boy, I hate to admit it, but like, thank God I didn't kill somebody.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely,
It's like,
right.
Are there things we can do to raise awareness about the roads, or things we can do to help educate our young people to maybe avoid a life-changing accident?
Yeah, right. And I mean that's always a thing, right? And by the grace of God go we, right? I think to the point of the ORV, the two main points that I want to make is, number one, it's a settled issue. And so it is bad governance to simply go and throw out a plan just because you're the new administration, right? That's not the way it works. And in the courts, you would use, stare decisis, right? Let it stand, the Supreme Court.
Maybe
would
optimize the program. Or
optimize the program, like work with it. But there are people who I've heard, well, just wait until the next administration comes in and then they can get rid of it, right? Or let's push it through before a new administration comes in and maybe doesn't want to do it. From my perspective, it's done. It's done. It's here. Now it's time for us to educate, to prepare, and to watch, right? If it results in the worst scenarios, then that changes the calculus, right? That changes our calculations. If we suddenly start to see groups coming in and buying 50 ATVs and renting them out to tourists, that's why we probably needed a better, more scaffolded planning and zoning idea, right? What are they allowed to do? What are they not allowed to do? What's the scaffold? How do you structure that in a way that keeps everybody safe, right? The intent was to allow locals to use their machines on roads that they are themselves familiar with. Unfortunately, from what I understand, you can't limit that. You can't limit the law in that way. So it was either everybody, including people who are driving down from out of town, or nobody, right? So, nothing's happened yet. If something happens and that changes our calculation, we will revisit, right? But broadly, I'm supportive of the idea. It's don't do stupid stuff. Right? Drive safe.
Everybody's on their own mechanisms here.
You have to do what you got to do.
Mr. Day from the southern part of the county. I bet there's a lot
I
of
comment on this issue.
Yeah.
I do. And this may be state, not county. It seems to me there's no reason we shouldn't be utilizing part of Yellowwood, the state park, Hoosier National, as a trail system for ATVs. And all of the counties that touch all of those make money off of RV tax and brings tourism. I mean, I don't even want to quote what Michigan's income is from their trail system.
Right.
And it's used a whole lot more than the county roads.
Yeah. To that point, I mean, yes, you're right. That's a state thing, I think. There's, the state is going to decide what it allows and what it doesn't allow on its property. You do touch on something that is very near and dear to my heart as a county person, is looking for those opportunities to both collaborate with state DNR officials, but then also to sort of assert ourselves a little bit. Like has been mentioned, DNR uses a lot of our land, and not specifically in a bad sort of way. I would much rather it be preserved, right, than developed. But we also maybe could find ways to benefit economically.
A trail that takes up 12 feet of the entire forest and rules keeping
Right.
them in there.
Right. Again, that's where you look for innovation. That's where you look for collaboration, and it's where you look to continue to advance. In structured ways.
Any further comments on the ORV ordinance, gentlemen? Any other comments in general or questions for Justin before we cease?
There's definitely a very important one up
Oh.
there that needs to be mentioned, I think.
Miss Schwenk is weighing in. She says, as an artist and teacher in the community, I would love to see this happen. Now, which one is she referring to, do you think? As an artist? Oh, the Tech Lab? Sock Factory?
The sock factory, yeah.
Very
I was
good.
going to say, I think she's referring to me, but I'm not sure.
We should love to see Mr. Schwenk become county commissioner. Thank you for that supportive comment there, Ms. Schwenk. I'd love to see it happen too.
That's right.
Tech Lab.
Tech Lab, yeah.
Very
The
good.
Tech Lab, yeah. Yeah.
You guys guessed correctly.
Yeah.
Points awarded.
And she's still on, too. She didn't leave.
Very good. Well, thank you to everybody that tuned in from home. Thank you to everybody that's going to watch this in the replays. If you have more questions, I'm sure that we can revisit this stream and check out your questions. Maybe Justin will even weigh in the comment section there.
Absolutely.
As he
Yep.
monitors these streams.
Yep.
Thank you to our live studio audience. You guys are great. Really thought-provoking questions and comments there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to say in closing here?
Just in closing, again, thank you, as Keenan said, for joining us tonight, for the stimulating questions. I was not really certain what I was going to be asked, and so I was kind of preparing for everything. So keeping it local, keeping it on topic, I think was fantastic. If you are willing to help, if I earned your vote tonight, we have a website, buildabetterbrowncounty.com. All one word, buildabetterbrowncounty.com. You can go there, see my policy proposals, see what a little bit more about me. Click on the donate to donate through ActBlue to my account. That has been one of the most shocking pieces of this entire campaign, is just how much money it costs to run even a local campaign. It is obscene. There is, I think, also some other QR codes in the links if you're interested in helping out, volunteering. There are, I need all the help I can get on election day to stand outside and give out flyers. I need people who will be starting our calls to kind of just canvas call neighbors and whatnot. I'm going to need people who are willing to go door to door and canvas neighborhoods with me.
In this day and age, the free method of helping people out, hopefully, as we create materials, as we post-produce this video, if you see something engaging that you enjoyed, a point that you agree with Justin on, you can share the reels that we'll create from this. You can share any of the videos in the shorter form that we create from this, and you can share this video with your friends that are looking for more information about county commissioner in this upcoming race, and Mr. Schwenk himself.
Yeah. Anyway, so just and last but not least, probably about next week or so, I'm expecting to get my yard signs to come in, and so if you're willing to put a yard sign out in your lawn, then that would be fantastic. Just so that you know, in theory, I believe you're not supposed to put them out before September 11th. So before we get absolutely inundated with gajillions of yard signs between now and the election, if they are specifically terrible to look at, you can always be like, you're not allowed to put that up until the 11th of September. Give me a few more days of an uninterrupted view. But if you would like one, please reach out to me via the website, via my email, and we can get you one. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thank you for coming in here. Once again, thank you to all of you viewers at home and to our live studio audience. I'll just, before we part ways, mention that Thursday evening at the Brown County Playhouse, we will be doing more musical things, which is our normal bread and butter situation. We will have the second installment of the Songwriter Showdown, and you can come and vote in person for the top 3 contestants that should move on to the next round. This coming Thursday is a special one for me. There's several people in this contest who I think are amazing songwriters. There's at least a few in every what we're calling the quarterfinal section, these first 4. There's at least a few, but this one's real special to me. So come down to the Brown County Playhouse, doors at 6:30, show at 7:30, cast your vote, and help your favorite musician move on to the next round. That said, have a great night, and we will see you next time here at Rainwater Studios. Take care.